All right, so I did for my micro teaching assignment Dead Men's Path by Chinua Achebe. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. So, as an introduction to the story, I want to introduce the main character, Michael Obi, who is a young man who becomes the new headmaster at a missionary school called Nadum Central School in 1949. So, this school is known to be an unprogressive school in the missionary work, which is what Michael tries to turn around and tries to make it one of the more progressive ones. So, in his attempts to do this, he tries to remove all the cultural beliefs from the kids and basically is very set in his ways about doing that. So, the location is probably in Africa. Never does it state in the book where it exactly is, but through a couple of references, I kind of pieced together that it must be somewhere in Nigeria. So, the first thing that showed this to us is that it gave us a definition of a mission authority. So it says many schools in African countries formerly colonized by the British were run by Christian missionary organization. So there it says that it's an African country, the organization. So that's what Mike Loby is running. It's a mission. It's a mission. Um, the next one was when Michael was talking about the Onitsha markets. Onitsha is a city in southeastern Nigeria. So, really, we live in Ontario, right? So, if I wouldn't talk about any markets in Nunavut, so it didn't really make sense for him to talk about a market in a completely different country. So, it led me to assume that it's in Nigeria, Africa. So, for the helpful information, I have a few unfamiliar words. So, the first one was pivotal, which means of crucial importance in relation to the development or success of something else. Next was denigration, to criticize in a derogatory manner. Then we had superannuated, obsolete through age or new technological or intellectual development, which basically just means that's old. Scandalized, to shock or offend someone by doing something immoral or illegal. We had cordialities, sincere affection and kindness. And finally, we had, I'm honestly not too certain how to pronounce this, but I think it was propitiate, to win or regain the favor of a god, spirit, or person by doing something that pleases them. So next we had our illusions. So our first illusion was Ani, which was a cultural allusion to a specific title in the Igbo culture. The full name is Odinani. Next we had the mission authorities, which is a reference to the colonization of the British running Christian missionary organizations. So the plot summary. So here we find ourselves having a new headmaster at a very unprogressive missionary school. He tries to really change the school. He makes the outside look beautiful with gardens, changes the teaching inside, and eventually he finds this path that is from the village shrine and it goes to their place of burial. And he doesn't like that. So he decides to try to close it because, like, there's no point in trying to get rid of kids' cultural beliefs if there's a path related to their cultural beliefs just like on the edge of their school. So he was told that the last time that they tried to close this path, it caused a big row with the village. But he decided, because he's very set in his ways, to just go with it anyways. That's when the Ani appeared and told him about how this path was what allowed for the spirits of the dead to go to their place of burial and for the newborn babies to come to the world. But being Obi as he is, trying to get rid of cultural beliefs, he just said it was dumb to have a path for dead people. Well, this kind of angered Ani, and it turns out that the next day, a woman died in childbirth, which caused an outrage in the city, or in the village, sorry. So they ended up going to the school and tearing down the building, as well as like destroying the yard around it. And it turns out that that day is the day that the supervisor came, the one that Obi was trying to impress to make it so that like his school would be ranked a lot higher in the missionary world. Um, So it ended up just kind of backfiring on him, trying to get rid of that cultural belief. So for my theme statement, I said that an unmovable person from opinion will always lead to conflict. Basically, this is saying that somebody who will not like move from their opinion, like somebody who is very set in their ways, will cause more problems than they will like help. So so my first quote would be, these old and superannuated people in the teaching field who would be better employed as traders in a niche market. So this is Obi talking about how old people are very cultural and it's very much not helping in the teaching field, and he's talking about how they'd be better off doing anything but teaching. Um, so he's it's just showing how set in his ways that it's just dumb cultural things and such. The next quote I had was, "But I remember there was a big row some time ago when we attempted to close it," said the teacher, which Obi replied with, "That was some time ago, but it will not be used now." So this is when Obi was trying to close the pathway. He was talking to one of his teachers, and they were talking about how it caused a big problem last time. So this is just showing how headstrong Obi is, and he just doesn't really change his opinion, even though he knows that it'll probably cause a conflict. So the final quote is actually the Ani, which is the probably elder of the village. He said, "What you say may be true, but we follow the practices of our fathers." So this was after Obi was talking about how he was removing the cultural beliefs from his children. But Ani was talking about how even if you remove it from our children, we will still follow our father's paths, which is actually showing that also the Ani is very set in his ways and is unmovable. So now that we have two unmovable people against each other, this isn't really going to cause, it's not really going to give us any solutions. It's more just going to cause conflict. So here we have the main literary elements. So the main literary element was probably irony, I'd say, because the entire short story is based around Obi turning around this school and making it into a progressive missionary school. But while Obi's trying to do this, he has this perfect image in mind, which kind of ends up distorting his final cause because in him trying to close this pathway, making it so that his perfect image is complete, he actually causes it to get destroyed because he angers the townspeople, making them destroy everything that he just built up. So it's kind of ironic that him trying to get his perfect image, he ends up actually getting nothing. Ends up making himself have nothing. So the secondary literary elements would have been foreshadowing, because at one point, I've already mentioned this, he was talking to his teacher about closing the path, and he said, "But I remember there was a big row some time ago when we attempted to close it." So this is kind of showing that Obi's going to close it anyways, and like this is showing that what is exactly going to happen again. And Obi just kind of ignores that. So my other one was the conflict, which was man versus man. So we have a short story based around two proud men, Obi and Ani. Neither of them are willing to change their opinions, which just makes it so that there's a big conflict between them, which ends up just scaling and scaling until it breaks. So the conflict starts where Obi tries to close the path, and Ani says no, but Obi says, "I'm closing it anyways." So Ani was very mad about this, but he ends up going back to the village. But things broke when one of the women died in childbirth, which meant which happened like it never happens, and it only happened once the path was closed. So that's when they decided to take back what was theirs, I guess. And the second one would have been Obi versus the supervisor. So Obi's entire goal is to please this supervisor that's going to come to rate his school and see how it's doing and such. And really, they can never be on the same side because Obi has to always be pleasing that supervisor. So it's not really Obi versus the supervisor. It's the supervisor is kind of just above him, and Obi's just constantly trying to please him. So it's just Obi pleasing the supervisor, I guess. So, for my personal response, for the literary merits, I would give it the use of real world settings. So, this always is talking about the British colonization, well, in Africa, really. And this is a very real thing that actually happened. And it's just really cool to see that it's showing us what happened there and stuff. But it's really cool because throughout the entire short story, it shows Michael as like a decent guy, other than the fact that he just doesn't like change his opinion. It shows him as like an okay guy, but from all the stories you hear about what happened in missionary schools, it kind of makes you think that like maybe this is just the way the author is making him seem. So it's really cool to look at it in two controversial ways. So the weakness in this short story would have been the wife to me. The wife was just a character that was kind of just like plopped in there with like little detail, and she kind of just followed around her husband. She really had no point in the story, and it was kind of just like a bunch of filler text in a short story, which isn't really what you want in a short story, considering the fact they're only 4 pages long or something. So my real world connection actually goes along with my relating it to. So the real world connection is Canadian history. So my relation was also Canadian history because we had the first world, the First Nations people were also put into missionary schools and such when the British came exploring from out east. Um, so I found this is like a very big relationship, other than the fact that like they had like a clear school, like an actual school, because like back then they just kind of had wood houses and everything. But they came and they basically tried to take away all their beliefs and transfer them to Christianity, while kind of just making their lives miserable. And that's basically exactly what happened in this text. So yeah, that's my short story.